while you're working at LAG, are you thinking that's the end game? Like, are you just trying to make it work? Like, are you thinking like I'm going to be here for a long time?
I honestly don't remember. I was just kind of so in the moment, like enjoying it and just thinking like I'll sort of ride this wave like as long as I can. Because after a few events and meeting some people, like you sort of get the sense of how esports is generally and how fickle it can sometimes be, especially on like the production side and the non-player staffing side. So I was like, okay, like that's interesting, but I mean, I'll do this as long as I can. And then if it turns into something, it turns into something. If I have to move on, I'll move on. But I was just trying to enjoy it because I was getting to travel with the team and go to places I'd never been before. And be involved in events.
Had you been to events before then?
No. So I'd never been to an esports event. I think the first COD event I ever watched was an MW2 tournament in like 2009. So like
MW2 tournament.
Yeah, I have a tweet on my Twitter that's like live tweeting a CTF round between Optic and somebody in MW2.
What?
So like that was one of the first things I ever tweeted.
What team would that have even been?
I have no idea.
It had to have been like Hex probably was on the team.
Maybe. But,
Hex and Diesel in them.
Yeah, but it was crazy. So I knew of competitive COD and had kept up with it, you know, from all the way back then, but I'd never been to an event because I grew up in Alabama and there weren't exactly a lot of local tournaments.
Not a lot of tournaments in Alabama.
In that part of the country. So like I knew about it and always wanted to attend, but the first event I ever attended was the Kickoff Classic in Vanguard. And so then my second ever COD event was Major One when Optic won in Dallas. That was my wife's first esports event. And
that's crazy.
LAG, we got eliminated day one. So like I just used my pass and kept coming back to watch the tournament. I was like, I get to watch Optic play COD in person for the first time in my life after being a fan for over a decade.
Right,
so that was quite an experience.
That's fucking nut, dude. That event was that event is a top 5 event for me ever. It's probably even top 2. Like really, that event was amazing. So what was your favorite piece that you ever did for LAG?
The Warpath documentary was basically like our version of Process. Like, I watched a lot of Vision coming up, but didn't like whenever the Fortnite Warzone era came out. Like I stopped watching the docuseries type stuff. I was more unplugged probably from the comp COD scene. So like I didn't know a lot about Process. I knew it was a thing. I knew who Roger and Matt were and things like that, but I wasn't tapped into every episode. Yeah. And then when they said we want to do a docuseries, I intentionally like wasn't watching any of that stuff because I didn't want it to be like derivative, if that makes sense. Like I didn't want anybody to feel like, oh, you're just copying what they're doing, because I had so much respect for like what you guys had built. Yeah. So I just kind of wanted it to be its own thing.
I was the opposite. I watched everything. I watched everything that anyone put out. Even if I didn't understand it, I was like, I want to know what they're doing, what I could do better. And then it was all technical shit, and I was like, I don't know how to do any of that. So.
Yeah. And so for me, it was like I wanted to not let that influence bleed in. That's kind of how I tend to be with anything. Like if we're about to film a content idea, like I try to approach it from a standpoint of like, what do I want to see here? And not necessarily what has somebody else done with this.
Okay.
And because of that, I think I learned a lot really quickly about the COD community, because when I started making those episodes, I was sort of like doing longer information dumps and like telling it from the perspective of like what I would be interested in as somebody who doesn't know a lot about competitive Call of Duty, like something that my friends and family could use as like an entryway into Comp COD. And so then I found through the Comp COD subreddit and started seeing like through prominent people in the community some of the feedback, and I was like, okay, like I can truncate this, I can do without some of this stuff, because like, oh, the people who are going to be watching this probably already know 90% of this information. And so that was like a really good learning experience for me. And so I think that was my favorite thing that I ever worked on, because it just taught me so much about the scene and the community and like how to make content for fans of Call of Duty, and to see like a response from a community that's so passionate about the product and not just a specific team. Like I think they were hungry to see more content in the COD scene. It was awesome to get to do that and see a lot of like really positive feedback too.
I think that's how all like doc series are. It's like you're not going to bring in new fans with doc series, but it does give like the fans of what you are doing like such good content that like you're not going to get anywhere else. Like Vision, I don't think Vision ever brought in like Optic fans. It just maybe it did in like if we did a Halo if we did a Halo portion, then maybe Halo fans would be like, oh, what is this, like with Lethal on the cover, and like let's watch it. And maybe there's some cross there, but like it's never going to hit trending and people are going to be like, what is this, who are these group of people, and then like become a fan. I don't think that happens often. Maybe it does, but it does give such like a good product to the core fan base of whatever you're doing it for, which I think is important. I mean, it's just like vlogging and podcasts. I mean, as we're on a podcast, like vlogging and podcasts and like different type of videos where it's like somebody does it and then everyone does it. And then it's just like, holy shit, I can't keep up. It was just TSM Legends there for a little bit. They were the only ones doing it. And then now like the wave is kind of gone, but there for a little bit from like 2019 to 2022, everyone had a docuseries. Yeah. It was insane. It was like impossible to keep up with it all. But I think it'll come back. I mean, I kind of miss it.
Yeah, I see more and more teams doing it, even if it's like a shorter form. Like a lot of teams are doing like 7 to 12 minute versions of it instead of hour-long cinematic recaps of whatever. And to be fair, like a lot of the content, like my challenge at LAG was like, we are just losing. How do I make this interesting? Like we're going 1-4, 0-5 in the first two stages of the year. And then I think the thing that was the biggest benefit was obviously the run we had at Major 2. So like I had a band teacher in high school, one of my drum instructors tell me like, you seem to have a knack for being in the right place at the right time. and that event was like just another one of those moments in my life.
Remind me of the event.
The losers run. So like Spart subs in for Gunless. We dropped to losers round 1 and win the tournament.
Oh my God, you were filming that.
So I got to capture that whole thing. My first year in esports, my first year working in competitive COD. So that's what I mean by like being in the right place at the right time, is starting off the year the way that we started after, the kickoff in Major 1. I was like, okay, this could be a long year if things don't turn around. I'm going to have to get creative on how we make this interesting if the team isn't going to be doing that well. And then we go to Minnesota and have one of the greatest losers bracket runs in Call of Duty history. So I got to do that and tell that story, which was awesome.
with the Volk, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I got to go back and watch that. That was such a fun event. I flew out Saturday morning because the boys got knocked into losers quick.
Yep.
And so I went, and so then they played on Friday, and I remember watching the game on Friday, and I was like, if they win, I'm going to fly out. If they lose, then I'm just going to stay back, obviously. And then they won, so I was like, all right, I guess I'm flying out. So I flew out the next day, 7 a.m. to Minnesota. They play at 2, they lose at 2. So now I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to gamble. I don't know. Played blackjack with Seth until 3 a.m.
Yeah, and that was the event that I like actually formally introduced myself to Roger. So like,
oh really?
That event was like, I didn't have any idea at the time, but looking back on it was like just such a landmark for
it's an important
everything
event.
that came after that, because it was like I don't know if you ever went backstage to like the PPAs.
Yeah.
But they had all the curtains in like 2 separate stages. So it was like 6 teams and 6 teams all next to each other and just curtain dividers. And we were at the very end of the hall, and then Optics PPA was right behind us.
Right.
So all the time as like Roger and I are filming, we're just like crossing each other.
Yeah.
And then like as teams get eliminated, we're like moving our laptops into those spaces so we can edit and ingest footage.
Yeah.
And so then we start talking and the classic conversation like, oh, what are you shooting on and all that stuff. So that's where I met Raj and met Paige. I don't think I formally met Paige, but she was on the scooter wheeling around at the time.
She was on the scooter.
So yeah, landmark event. A lot of really awesome things ended up happening there. So